The God of High School dropped probably the biggest cliffhanger I think I could possibly assume this series is capable of, which is the God of High School's tournament is officially over. And I'm like, really? We have 2 episodes left to go with Season 1. Obviously, I knew this wasn't going to be a tournament forever, and eventually we'd move past the whole tournament arc. But I wasn't expecting it at episode 11 of a 13-episode season. And honestly, the sky's the limit, literally, with this show. When you have a godlike hand coming crashing down on our boy, who were like, oh, Ninetales gonna wreck our shit, and then apparently he's already had power that he didn't even know about, which is like, okay, Jin Mori, what are you accomplishing here? What are you doing? I don't know. You see not only our boy Huixiu, just he understands what it's like to lose something, what it's like to have someone close to you not be able to continue, and you end the episode with him seeing his 2 teammates, one lose a leg, literally, and the other lose an arm, and I'm like, you went too far. Shark Boy, you went too far, and without a doubt he did, and I don't know if he's gonna come out of this alive, most likely, but still, it's not looking good for any character in this show right now, especially if the tournament is now officially over. The series definitely has a lot going on for it, and I think this is going to be a series that every episode more likely is going to have people say, oh, there's too much happening, I don't know what's going on, and I've never read the webtoon. I have no experience with the webtoon, and I've even seen some people who've read the webtoon say the way the anime is doesn't make sense, but as someone who's never experienced the source material, it feels like a very exhilarating ride that the longer you watch, the more things make sense. And even though this episode definitely has a lot of questions that I want answered, I feel like with the popularity of this series, it's getting a season 2 almost guaranteed. And I'm sure episodes 12 and 13 will further expand on what will happen in this episode, so things will make sense. It's just this isn't a series where everything's going to be explained each episode. It's not going to go beat by beat. It's going to shove a lot of things down our throat, and we're going to have to wait and see what's about to happen. And the whole idea of the fight between Ninetales as well as Jin, I thought was something that was handled actually pretty well, with a ton of uncertainty backing it. I don't know who Jin is as a person. I've seen some theories float around, and I feel like those theories have been floating around for a while here. They've been floating around for a little too long, and I feel like that's because most likely it's a webtoon reader basically pretending to be an anime only, which happens a lot. So I'm not going to bring up that theory because I feel like it's kind of possible that it could be, and it feels like there was no real foreshadowing when they started bringing up this theory. So I'm going to wait and see who he is and what his ability is and things like that, but all I can say is it feels like we don't know what's going on with Jin Mori. He himself doesn't know, no one does, but you can definitely see there's a difference between what happened with the Ninetales power, which we get some great lore backstory, and how pretty much God's the reason why shit went wrong with the key, which you gotta love it when a show's like, hey, we're gonna have this like religious undertone and we're just gonna right out blame God. Love it when they throw that because it just gives you a reason to root for characters like, you know, someone who has the ability of the Ninetales Fox, which is a completely badass ability, I have to say, and they did gorgeous imagery with its animation and arts design to really separate it from anything we've seen up until this point. The cyclone flames and things like that, absolutely gorgeous visuals. But I have to say, I really enjoyed just seeing something that felt very different, because when you see that hand get summoned, it feels a lot different than what we were seeing with the Ninetales, and that's going to be really interesting to see how they're going to explore that, because it feels completely different than what we were seeing, and when we saw it last week, we thought this was it, this was the key. And supposedly, Ninetales is the key. Apparently that is 100% the key, but there is a very big uncertainty of what Jin Mori is, because if he's able to defeat the key, he's got to be something pretty impressive. So I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with that, but I thought they actually avoided something that could feel very typical, where the main character of course wins because he's the main character. But the fact that, you know, there's been a lot of setup with Jin as a character, the whole forbidden fruit thing that he ate and how like his body reacted very negatively. The fact that he's been very, like, strung about, like, hey, I'm not going to borrow power. And then as he was watching his friend fight, he realized that it's not really you kind of, like, borrowing in, and it's not really you. Like, you make it your own. And then you start seeing him actually accept, most likely, his own power that he's had all along. So it's nice to see that things aren't really coming from left field. In terms of this battle and the victory, it didn't feel like he won just because he's the main character. I honestly feel like the setup was here for a long time, and seeing it all taken. Just the simple lines that he said, like the fact that he actually acknowledged that it wasn't like he was fighting a different person. It was the same person using abilities in his own unique way, which made him respect it, which most likely unlocked his true abilities, which we still don't know. Was that the cherry oak? Was it something different? We don't know, and that's a really fun feeling that it can still throw these twists and turns our way. And the fight was really, really engaging. I mean, just the constant back and forth between air and fire was beautifully done, and it was exhilarating. I mean, it starts out pretty much what we assumed was going to happen, where it was going to be very one-sided. I mean, if you have the Ninetales Fox, you're going to absolutely wreck people's shit, and they do. I mean, Jin looked like he was getting annihilated, but he was never backing down, which was interesting. I thought he was really going to hold his own for a while there, and then when you see his abilities start to awaken there, it was pretty devastating. And just to see just the defeat, but also the respect that someone that he admired for so long, this grandfather who is so important to both of these characters, he feels like, well, if his grandson was able to beat me, I can go out with a smile, even though it's disappointing that I lost. And I was pretty okay with this episode just being that and maybe kind of toning it down with some more slice of life stuff, which it seemingly was going for. I mean, you get the recovery scene, you get some bonding moments, and I thought that was pretty good. I thought they did a solid job. I was like, we got our animation that was just pure spectacle and adrenaline. We get insane theories that we can start kind of like messing around with in our head. What more can you really want? And then they start really showing us something that looked like carnage, in my opinion. And I really liked this moment, despite it being something I didn't know what I was seeing, why I was experiencing it. But as Jin and Hsieh was actually fighting, you know, every time they were using their abilities, this person was reacting seemingly to this like godlike power. So apparently that kind of set him off, and he became someone who can consume people for its own benefit, but also seemingly can heal people, as that maid got seemingly killed, and then he put her inside him. I mean, it sounds like hentai here, but, you know, comes out and, yeah, it looks like a hot mess, but apparently was fine afterwards. And this was just such a weird and bizarre scene, but the fact that God of High School has always been embracing its weird and bizarre side, I really didn't find that an issue. I actually found it kind of intriguing. The only thing that I thought to myself could be a weird thing is if they deal with this threat and then go back to the tournament. So when they announced that the tournament's officially over, I was like, oh, I guess I had nothing to worry about at all. And I've seen a lot of people say, like, because of the way this episode was structured, it felt like 2 or 3 episodes because it was just doing multiple things. You had the tournament, then you had the carnage situation, then you had the more kind of slice of life bonding sequences. And while that may be true, this is a series that, like, I've seen so many people say, oh, they missed their mark, they didn't adapt it right, and then 3 episodes later, they take back those statements. And I feel like a similar thing's going to happen with episodes 12 and 13. I mean, this is just obviously from someone who's never experienced the webtoon. But to me, it feels like the things that I don't understand, why this carnage-like being was here, why was he reacting to Jin and Hsieh, I don't know, but I'm sure it will explain it. It's not like just because the webtoon explained it in the same chapter that all this other content was, doesn't mean the anime can't explain it in future episodes, which I'm sure they will. And that's what I really like about it, is there's constantly this escalation and threat, but it doesn't feel like escalation for no point. This is all about gods and just mythical spirits and things like that, so of course you're going to have some pretty insane imagery and just, honestly, narrative design. So to me, it feels like something that does overwhelm you in a sense, but the overwhelming is done on purpose, so you try to think, you try to theorize, you try to speculate, and then when they throw the real answer your way, you're like, I didn't see that coming, but looking back, this totally makes sense. And maybe those previous issues I've had totally kind of make up for it. It doesn't actually feel like issues anymore. I just need to give it time. And I think this is going to be a show that I think a lot of people who binge it for the first time won't have the same issues as those who watched it weekly, who are more like, I don't know why this is happening and things like that, because there's always different ways to consume media. But this is going to be a show that I think is both good weekly and binge, but I think binge is going to be the preferred option, which is, I think, of the way most people who read the webtoon experience it, because they hear how good it is, and then they binge it, and then they are like, oh god, I need the next chapter. But this was an adrenaline-pumping episode. It was exciting, it was overwhelming, but that overwhelming wasn't an issue for me, because it felt like it was trying to really establish that things are changing, and what we thought the God of High School was is not what it actually is, and everything's about to change. And I mean, the fact that apparently, you know, this cult-like group is now going to try to kill Ninetales, I mean, I don't know what they're going to accomplish here. I'm excited, I'm terrified, and honestly, I just feel bad for our boy. He just keeps losing his friends, and I don't know if they can heal him, because it seems like the leg and the arm were consumed. Most likely, if they still had the leg and they got to them into an operation room soon enough, they could reattach it, because as long as you have a limb, even with our own modern medicine, we can reattach a lot of things as long as it's done quick enough. But it seems like that shark pretty much consumed them to save them, and it's like, oh god, this series is brutal. Overall, I thought this was a really exciting and crazy episode, but I'm sure this is going to be an episode that's going to have a lot of opinions, and I welcome all of them down in that comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, of course, leave a like to show your support and hit that subscribe button if you happen to be new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.